Thank you for joining Effortless Attraction. My name is Evelyn McAleer. I'm the author of A Life You Want, Effortless, and The Woman's Journey. I'm a life coach, business mentor, and inspirational speaker. And my greatest value is making a difference in people's lives. So I hope through these podcasts I can make a difference to your life.
Effortless Attraction podcast is sponsored by Maria Young Wellbeing, wellness mentor and creator of Infusion, a platform designed to inspire health, wealth, abundance, and a life lived with purpose. Maria conducts events, trainings, and the blending of practical tools for lasting change. Her mission is simple: to help you live well and rise strong. You can explore more at www.mariayoungwellbeing.co.uk or infusion.mn.co.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on another Effortless Attraction podcast. Today, I am joined with Martina Crudden, who lives in the beautiful countryside of County Monaghan. She's been married to her husband Seamus for 20 plus years now and is a mother to 4 daughters and a very young grandmother also. Martina is a life and death coach, NLP practitioner, spiritual mentor, divine connection messenger, meditation teacher, Reiki master, and has trained in numerous healing modalities. Martina has a passion for life after realizing how precious every moment is since the death of her 2 children in 2009 and 2011. Martina had her own near-death experience in 2015 and received a message from the divine that she was to come back to do work here on earth and to help humanity. And this has led her on a deep inner spiritual journey in what she has found the true meaning of life, inner peace and purpose. And since then, she's been receiving messages and visions and has dedicated her life to creating from the heart. Martina inspires others to live a life that they love. She empowers each individual to look for blessings in every challenge. Martina has developed a road safety program for school children in Ireland, in which she has received awards for her work. She has also helped create training programs and support groups for parents who have lost a child, for suicide prevention, and works tirelessly in her community, fundraising for charities and foundations close to her heart. She has received numerous awards in recognition of this work, and she believes that we can create massive changes in our lives when we take the approach of the Trinity, the mind, the body, and the spiritual healing. Collectively, we can empower others globally and are a force for good for all humanity. Martina, you are most welcome today.
Thank you, Evelyn. It's been a while.
Yeah, I was hearing a bit of interference when I was doing when I was reading out your introduction there, and I thought, well, hold on, we might have more with us than I can actually physically see.
That's usually the case, isn't it? Really? We only think we're alone. We're not. We're not really.
Oh, Martina, there's so much in that what I just read out. I know I have been meaning to have this chat with you this long and many a day. And I think now is the right time. You know, the date that we're doing this or recording this podcast is at the end of February 2026. And alone on our roads in the north of Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, all of Ireland, how many deaths there has been just in such a very, very short space of time. And also this week, it's your son's anniversary, I believe it is, Martina. Could you talk us through that time that you were the person getting the knock on the door or the phone call, Martina?
Yeah, it's actually 15 years, Evelyn. I can't even believe I'm even saying that, because in ways it feels like a lifetime, and in other ways it just feels like yesterday. And, as you just mentioned there's been so many deaths this year alone, and we're only coming to the end of February, and it's shocking because every time you put on the radio or the news or it comes up on your phone that, there's 2 more deaths, even in Donegal there yesterday. And it brings you back straight to what the families are going to go through. So for me, I had lost Jamie Lee prior to that. So she was my wee girl, and she had died just when she was 4 days old. And that was in 2009. So I was still in the process of grieving her when Daniel got up to go to school, and I had an awful feeling that morning. It's just that sense of connection, even though you may not be even aware of it at the time, but I just had a bad feeling. And my husband was away head cutting because it was coming to the end of the season. So he was gone working, and he had a terrible headache. And again, it just shows that sometimes you're feeling something which you don't really know what it is. So I just went and lifted him, and we went to drive in the road. I just had such, I don't know, I can't even explain it or put it into words. But I went and lifted Seamus, and I was driving in the road to Clonus from our home, which is only a few miles. And at the same time, then we met a guard coming to get us. And when I stopped the car, I just heard him saying to Seamus, "Don't let Martina out," because we knew the guard personally. And of course, I went up the road and I just jumped out and ran up. And the scene, that I met was ambulances, fire brigade, car cut in bits to get him out. And they just got him into the ambulance, and they just told us to follow him over. So when we got to the hospital, I just looked in the back of the ambulance and just seen all his clothes had been cut, his shoes. And when they brought me in to see him, the first thing I seen was blood coming from his ears. And that's the image that stays with me. And short while later, then the doctor came, and I just knew when he walked in the room, I could just see in his eyes what he was going to say. And he just said, "Just get the family. You won't make it through the night." So then everybody gathered, all the school, all his friends, teachers. He made it through the night, and he lived for 5 days, and we kept vigil in the hospital. They opened up a ward, they let us stay, they fed us. I honestly can't express how well we were cared for and looked after by, we knew some of the people that were working with him, and one of the ladies just said to me, "Don't move him, just keep him here." I think she knew herself, and I knew myself that day that he wasn't coming back. Even though he was living for 5 days, I knew on the day that he wasn't, and I knew I was going to have to make decisions that was going to take a lot of strength and a lot of courage. And I'd also had that feeling from when Jamie Lee had died. That morning I was in the chapel in Crumlin Hospital, and I know I'm going back a bit, but it helped me to understand and know what it feels like. So that morning in Crumlin, I was in the little chapel, and I just was at Our Lady's statue, and I just said, "Please, if you're going to take her, please take her now and don't let her suffer." And sometimes we're praying, for life, but sometimes we're praying, to take them out of their suffering and to allow them to be set free from that. And it was nothing I'd ever imagined before that I would be willing to let my child go. But when you're watching your child suffer, and I don't know, there's just an inner knowing that she wasn't going to be coming home with us. So when we were running up the stairs from the chapel, the nurse came to get us, and I said, "She's going, isn't she?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "So just take her off all of the machines and just hand her to me." And in that moment, I was holding her and allowing her and giving her, I suppose, reassurance to, if that was her time and she needed to leave me, then just to let go, that I was, I don't want to use the word happy with the decision, but I knew that if her life was not going to be a life of fulfillment and joy, and if she was going to suffer, then I was willing to let her go and to put up with that suffering. So in that moment, I knew what it felt like, and they told me that she'd passed away in my arms, but I passed her over to Seamus, and then she opened her eyes and she lived in his arms then for another 20 minutes. So even though doctors were telling us different things, she defied all those odds, where she should have been sedated and, shouldn't have been able to open her eyes, shouldn't have, all the things that she shouldn't have done, she was able to do in those short few hours. So it was quite the same when it came to Daniel. There was just something inside me that knew that he was going to die, and I knew I could feel his soul. I could feel his spirit with me. That was making me make decisions because we'd lost Jamie Lee because of her kidneys. We had discussed as a family about organ donation. So then we were asked the question, had we discussed organ donation, or, when Daniel was pronounced then brain dead at um, at 5 o'clock that evening. Already had made those decisions. I had already, wrote out everything about his funeral, what I wanted, even though he hadn't passed on, but I could feel his presence and I could feel that he was with me making the decisions that needed to be made. And it was quite difficult, even though we'd lost a child because of our kidneys had failed, it was still so hard to make the decision of organ donation, because when you sit down to write that, sign your child over and let them go, that was probably one of the hardest things that I didn't think would be as hard to do. But once they go to theatre, that's it. You're not with them, even though their body was still present with you. I find that probably one of the most difficult, and took me years to actually make peace with it, because there's times you thought, did I give up on him too soon? Even though I knew deep down in my heart that it was the right decision for him and for, I know there's 5 other lives were saved through that process of organ donation. So in a way, he was still living on. We were given the gift of life, which is really, really challenging, and to sit down and just sign that paper that you're willing to let your child go, So that's how that time was so precious, those 5 days. It helped me, I guess, with the grieving process as well. You're there, there's people coming from all over, the gathering of community and feeling you weren't alone. It's hard to even put words to it, Evelyn, but
Yeah, and
people really show up at a time when
of course.
you're at your
And do you
lowest.
find that people don't know what to say then, Martina?
Well, it takes time, yeah. People will avoid you. They were great. I found the youth really amazing. The people that you didn't expect. It was all the friends that gathered. They were the ones that called for year. The house never emptied, for a full year. So we didn't ever get a chance to really grieve, because we were just surrounded by people.
Yeah.
And then on the other hand, you were trying to avoid shops. You were trying to avoid, because you could just see people turn the other aisle. Or, a few months late down the line, a woman said to me, that she was sorry about the loss of my son. And of course, the tears had started at that stage when it started to really kick in. And I'll never forget what she said. She just said, "Oh my God, you're not over it yet." And it just shocked me, it just hit me so hard of the perceptions of people. And that was only a couple of months, after his death. And I just like, wow,
Even 15 years on. Like, what age was Daniel?
he was 17 when he
So
died.
Daniel was
Yeah.
17 and the wee girl was 4 days. So you know what I mean? You had
Yeah.
that's two kids. I think it must be one of the most difficult things in life for a parent to bury a child, never mind two, because that's not how life should be. Even though we lost our parents when they were relatively young, I always think it was in the order that it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Because that would have destroyed my mother if she had to do anything like that to her. She would have had no life afterwards. Yeah, and I'm sure all of these things that take place now that you see or hear all the time, it just brings all of that back and what the families and all of that are going through. And this is 15 years down the line, we're getting to talk about that. I'm getting to talk to you about this on the strength of that, from I think that the tragedy that you've gone into schools here. I see you've started up like a road safety program. Was that on the
Yeah,
back of Daniel's?
it was a few people that had actually started it in Monaghan, and they had asked me would I come and speak. So at that time, I was, yes, of course, if it helps save one life, then there has to be a reason for it. You know, you're always looking to find a reason. Well, I am. I might be completely different, but I'd also seen I had lost quite a number of friends when I was younger through road traffic accidents. My cousin had died, lots of friends that had passed as well, and in accidents that I should have been gone or should have been there. And I just was trying to make sense of why was I saved, you know, and it always seemed to be in road traffic accidents. So when I was asked, it was, I guess, a no-brainer in a way that, yeah, this is obviously the reason for it. And it was not easy because it was actually Daniel's doctor, Dr. Butt, who was the A&E consultant, was also was helping me with that. So we were all working together as a team. And it has developed now that it's in every school in Ireland. It took 9 years for that to actually take place. So instead of me having to be there physically now, where I was doing it for years, um, you know, going out and speaking to 300-400 students at a time. But then there was one day in Cavan where we were in the room and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Evelyn, Dr. Butt, who was Daniel's doctor and consultant, was up speaking and speaking. It's quite hard hitting. And I do really feel that everybody that is out on the road should go through a program like this to actually see the impact that it has on families and young people. Because it isn't just me speaking, you know, you've somebody that are critically injured that you don't hear about whenever there's an accident as well. You've got an undertaker, you've got the A&E consultant, what he has to go through. You have people that are coming from the rally school to teach people that if they want to be out on the roads and they want to speed, to go to a safe space to do that. So that it's a broad spectrum of and the Gardaí as well, of course. But it's in 2015, Evelyn, I was at that event and it was just something hit me. I could hear the screeching of tires and it just automatically brought me into what Daniel must have went through. And I went through like a post-traumatic stress. You know, I ended up in bed, my organs started to fail, my body started to shut down. And at the same time, in 2015, I should go back a wee bit, the year of Daniel's first anniversary, the man that actually was in the accident that had killed Daniel actually sued me. And so I went through a whole fighting court case. These are things that people don't actually hear about or they don't know about. You know, they hear about an accident, but they don't know of the aftermath that takes place after that, the inquest. And then getting a solicitor's letter on his first anniversary really shook me to the core. I was probably more upset about that. So the whole thing had ended in 2015 and I just took to the bed. I couldn't do it anymore. And I was constantly bleeding. So I had went into hospital and they'd done an ablation on my womb to prevent the bleeding, which it again they talk about in traditional Chinese medicine about the womb and the bleeding is, you know, the grief that is coming through your body as well. And then a week later, I had a massive hemorrhage and I ended up dying and passing away in the hospital. But the same doctor, Dr. Butt, that was Daniel's doctor, just was out driving and he wasn't even working, but he just got this sign or feeling to go to the hospital. And he seen my name on the board and he came in and he actually saved me. So at that time when I had left, he got me to theatre, but he said it was like a miracle, all the blood just stopped. But in the meantime, I had left my body and I could see them working on me. And then my grandmother and my children came to me and they took me to the light and just wanted to reassure me that they were okay. And they showed me heaven. And I did not want to come back. I can't even. express or try and describe what I felt or seen there, because it was nothing like I'd ever felt in on this earth plane at all. So yeah, I'd left, but I was told I had to come back, that it wasn't my time to stay. And
Do you
I
see
don't
how
mean it
this
in a
is all
point.
developed from a road? What me saying, were you doing road safety? This woman will take this whole interview. I'll never get a chance to ask her a question because I love.
Yeah,
Uh, sorry, Martina, for interrupting because I'm like, now slow down, now slow down.
it's crazy. Because it's hard to even put words to it. The roller coaster was just
Yeah. Do you
it.
know,
It
Martina?
was a roller
I've
coaster.
had interviews before with gentlemen and different
Yes.
people that had near death experience or outer body experience, whatever people choose to call it. And I know you had, but I don't act, we never actually got to speak about this. So that's why I'm like, now slow down so I can get to hear every bit of this. So at that time, you could see them operating on you. You know what? I had an interview with a guy, Benny O'Hanlon, Benny that does Todd Sleep there, and Benny said something about his heart. He could actually see one's, he knew it was happening through the wall or something. He described something similar. And Jeffrey Olsen, of
Yeah.
course, then just completely and did not want to come back. That
Mm.
feeling. But in you saying that, my children were there, the hope that that would bring to someone else and that you got to see them. So tell us this, was it as you remembered them?
Yeah, Daniel, yeah, they were. My grandmother was a healer as well in her lifetime. So she was, I guess, that safety and security as well. But it's also, like handing on the baton. It was okay, now it's your time to take that role. And they're exactly who I would have wanted to be there for me, to greet me when I'm passing.
Yeah.
And it was quite strange, because it was almost like in phases, but it was very, very quick. Where I was, first of all, I realized that I was out of my body and watching. I could see Seamus on my up by my side, and then the nurse and the doctors, and then another doctor, at my feet, and so it was before I got to the surgery, so I was still in the room that they had me in. So I was watching that from above, and then it was like this light just opened up, and there was nothing there first, and then it was my grandmother and children. But then it was like I was climbing higher and higher, and the colors and the nature and the sounds. It was like all your senses completely heightened. That it's hard to explain it. When I come back, I could hear birds. I could hear everything that was going on outside, and it's hard to adjust to that, a little bit when you come back, because all I was like, I don't want to go back. I just want to stay here. And even though I had a family here, it was just the love, the peace, the no suffering, the no judgment. There was absolutely just pure unconditional love, because I
Mm,
still feel we have conditions here on this
on love.
earth.
Yeah, but that's what Jeffrey Olsen had described in his near-death experience too, that it was he was in the presence of unconditional love and he didn't want
Yeah,
to come back. And then when he came back, sure, his body was in bits. He
yeah,
was in complete and utter pain. Do you know what, Martina? There's like so many podcasts in this one podcast. I could do
yeah.
a whole
I know, I
podcast
know,
on that itself.
absolutely.
So, okay, so now 2050, now we've passed, if you come out of hospital at this stage, when did you start, or had you already started, doing your NLP, your Reiki?
So when I came out of hospital, I still had to rehabilitate. It wasn't just that, oh, I had that experience and my body was completely healed. That's not how it worked. If only it, well, could I remember laying here in the sofa? I couldn't even walk upstairs. I was just so weak and still trying to get myself back. I hadn't told anybody this, Evelyn. I hadn't told my family. I thought they'll lock me up. They'll think that I'm crazy. So I had that element of, oh, there's a mental health issue here. That's what they're going to think, that I'm completely crazy. And at the same time in the hospital, because of what had happened, the director of the hospital knew that there was a failing on their behalf. And they came with forms for me to take a case against them. And I was like, no, and nobody could understand why. But to me, there was no price that I could put on that, what I had experienced. And I know that might say it might have made my life a little bit easier, but I didn't care about any of that. That was irrelevant to me, still is irrelevant to me. The experience I had was priceless. But when I came back, I still had to learn how to navigate this world. And I remember looking out the window and thinking, if only I could walk to them piers. And I was like lying, and my children were coming in from school, and I'd be lying, and I could see their faces. And one of them asked me, "Are you going to die too, Mommy?" And that's what got me. And I just thought I have to do everything it takes, no matter what it takes, to actually make life easier for us all. I knew that my children on the other side were completely fine. I needed to make sure that my children here, I had 4 wee girls. And so I just thought, right, you sent me back here, God, you need to show me and direct me where and what I am supposed to do. And then it all started very quickly. So I started with shamanic meditation and drumming was originally what it started with. Then I went for healing treatments and Reiki. Then I trained in Reiki in 2015. Then I was having these signs. I said, I've no money. I still can't work. I can't do anything. If you want me, you need to give me something, and how am I going to do that and how am I going to get there? So I started visualizing getting on a plane. I discovered about Richard Bandler and neurolinguistic programming and how that could affect trauma. And I just knew, I just could feel it. And Joe Dispenza's work as well. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but you need to get me there. So then I just booked a flight laying on the sofa. And I was like, I don't know, I haven't the money to pay for the course, but I know if the flight booked and I know what's going to come. And then money just started to come to me and checks come through the post, different things that it was unexpected. I was like, okay, I'm following this because this is what I know is going to help other people. Firstly, I wanted to help myself, but I really knew that I was here to help others. I knew that that's what my purpose or my mission now was to help other people that are going through similar journeys. Because I've seen the devastation in
Yeah,
other families locally, what it's done to them. It's just, and I just made a promise with myself that I did not want to go through that same
yeah.
torture.
But isn't that complete surrender there, Martina? I have no idea how, but also
Yeah,
whether people choose to call it faith or belief, but I am just guessing by talking. This isn't about religion. This isn't about what
no,
religion anybody's brought up with. It's something greater than that, and it's not even a human. It's an energy. It's an entity. It's something that is within us all, and you surrender that and you hand that over and say, right, you're going to have to give me a shout out here. Help me. So did you go then and do the Joe Dispenza course?
I did. Yeah, I did. It was Richard Bandler first and Paul McKenna, and I traveled to London, and I remember, like, I was crippled with anxiety. I was crippled with fear. I had no clue what I was walking into, and I came back a completely different person. I can't. I don't even know how to explain it. But I was just sitting there thinking, oh my God, why do people not know that this is available to them? You know, it's the mind. You go to a doctor and they're treating either the mind or the body, or it's not taken as a whole entity and looked at how your thoughts are creating an emotion and a feeling. Every time I drive the road, Evelyn, I would be going through the crash scene. I'd be going through it all. And nobody explained to me that this was actually your brain doesn't know what's real and what's just a memory. So it's actually having the same impact on your body every single time. I went through that for years. So of course my body shut down. So, and I was like, I didn't realize that. I didn't understand it. And then it was like the penny dropped and I'm like, oh my God, I've done this even to myself. I have the power to make myself sick, but I also have the power to make myself better. And we have such, I went on a search of different religions, different, spirituality, but it all led me back to myself. I've had rows with God. I've sat in churches and effed for my height. And, even yet there's times like, right, come on now, you know, I'm talking to an energy, but that energy is also within me. So it's like, cop yourself on, girl, get your shit together. But I do know the impact of trauma and I know the impact of grief. And that is where my heart lies because I've tried lots of different things, but it all has led me back to the grief and the trauma. And even last year, I came face to face with that man, and where there was an event taking place. And my body went into shock straight away as soon as I seen him.
This was the man that
But
was involved with the
yeah,
accident.
yeah. And it was more the court case that and everything that I had problems with that I still hadn't really dealt with. I thought I had, but it gave me the opportunity to actually say, I forgive you. I can forgive you for the accident. I don't understand what went on. I said, but I just want to thank you for making me the person that I am today. I said, because the more it nearly destroyed me and my family, I am who I am because of it all. And the the turmoil, the torture, the falling outs with family members, it was like a weight lifted off me. And we talk about forgiveness, but do we truly understand it and really feel it? And it's really about freeing yourself from the pain and the suffering. It's not about condoning the acts or the behavior. And I've spoke to so many priests and people that are on that spiritual journey that tell you what to do, but at the end of the day, it's an inner knowing, it's an understanding that only you can feel when you get it.
Mm.
Don't know how to really put words to it yet. And it sent me on the journey of becoming a grief educator in the past year and really revisiting all the things that, I thought I had really went into and dealt with, but there was still bits that needed to be resolved. And it really did help me because I didn't know whether I was coming or going last year. It's,
Did well, you've had a lot. You've had a couple of in the last few years, new deliveries, new
oh yeah,
arrivals.
yeah. They're such a gift. I say every child is a gift, no
Y-
matter how long you have them for. And
Yeah,
these boys just give us a whole new lease of life. Two wee boys, 7 weeks apart, and they're just it's hard. They just light you up. They give
yeah,
you a purpose. They drive you
yeah.
crazy. It's just pure life and
I know. Isn't it amazing?
messiness
Then that
and
comes
everything.
back again,
Yeah.
the life and the light. Martina, can you see, or reflecting back on all on those years from 2009 onwards, on the pain and the suffering and the everything that you've gone through and where you're at today? Whenever you said there a while ago, I needed to make sense of this, the near-death experience and all of that. Have you made sense of why these things all, if we believe that everything's in divine order and there's a reason as to why things take place, has it made any more sense to you now?
To me, yes. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm still human. And there's times that I question and I mess up and I think, oh, is this right? Is that right? But now, you used the word surrender earlier. I've surrendered trying to figure it out. I've surrendered trying to make sense for other people as well, to just trust and get out of the way. Sometimes we're trying to, we can't make sense of it all at a time. You're only going to get what you can deal with at a certain time because it's too much, it's too overwhelming. I'm still navigating my way, even though I understand the greater picture. But we're still human and we're still
Mm,
here and we've chosen to be here. There's times you think, what was I actually thinking, choosing to. Not everybody believes that either. Not everybody believes in the afterlife or previous lives and all of that. But I have made peace with it. I am not afraid of death. Um, I'm more concerned with how I live my life
yeah,
than actually passing on. And there's times when you hear of these tragedies, I don't necessarily feel for the death of the person because I
hmm,
know what they're going to, but I do understand and I really have empathy and compassion for those that are left behind.
yeah. pain,
No.
the suffering. So, Martina, tell us this with all of your knowledge and wisdom and experience now with your NLP and your coaching and you're doing workshops. Because I want to let people know what you do and how you do it, if it's online, in person.
Yeah. I've mostly, Evelyn, I've been on a journey because of I understood mental health and how that took me down a path that I didn't want to be here. So when I had lost my children, there was time that I did not want to be here, and I know the depth of it and I know the darkness of that place. So most of my work has been around mental and physical health, but mostly mental health. And I work with a couple of charities here in Ireland, Shine Mental Health in Ireland, where I run weekly groups in both Cavan and Monaghan. I was doing meditation classes for about 4 years that, COVID kind of put a wee stop to that. So, and it gave me a chance to retrain in different modalities. So, I haven't started those up just yet again, but I work with people online. I work with people one-to-one in person. So yeah, and then I work with LA 519, which is a suicide prevention charity here in Monaghan. And most of the work is done through the schools and with the youth and community. So my work is working, trying to find different ways to teach people how to live rather than prevent them from dying. So I kind of take a different approach on it than most. So we're
Yeah,
bringing in, dancing into schools, teaching them nutrition for your health, your mental and physical health. We have breath work classes, we have mindfulness for kids, and then transitioning from primary into secondary. So there's so many elements to it. And
yeah,
it's such a joy to see the difference that you make. And I think we really underestimate just our presence, sitting and listening and being with someone when they're going through tough times is sometimes all that is actually needed. But to
yeah.
know that there are other ways that can help you, because I was running to every doctor specialist trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And it all came back to in here.
Yourself. Do you
Yeah.
know what? I remember um, when I was saying to Jim last night here, I said I'm talking to Lady Martina tomorrow. I said I remember one of my first talks at the time over in Kildress, and you came from Kildress, you came from Monaghan up to
Yeah.
Kildress. I always remember that. But I've seen you over the years really excel, especially in your presence online and sharing what it is that you do and be really extremely confident. I always say a force to be reckoned with, but not in a negative way, but very powerful now in your presence, Martina, where once upon a time I think you had a setback. But I have
Yeah.
seen that in you this good number of years where you've, as you say, when it comes back to self, when I find myself and I'm here to assist and help. But what I'm going to do is put your details in the description of the podcast if anyone wants to reach out to get seek one-to-one or to avail of some of your classes or advice. I'll put the details down below. And ladies and gentlemen, as always, listen, if you get a chance, I always like to I love to hear a bit of feedback. I mean, this was a very special podcast. We could talk for ages, forever
I
on
know.
it because there's so many things to talk about, but it's good to see, you know what I mean? I think it is like about hope, bringing hope. Where there's darkness, let me show light. Where there's sadness, let me bring joy. And those families that are just beginning their grieving journey, my gosh, there's no time, there's no nothing, but there
Yeah.
is hope at some point, at some point. And Martina, I want to say thank you so much for being here, for your wisdom, for your sharing your stories, and for everything that you do for the good
Thank
of
you, Evelyn.
humanity.
I appreciate it. We're all in this together, aren't we? Yeah.
That's it. Thank you, Martina.
If you're enjoying the podcast, you can support the show on Spotify for just £1.99 a month. You'll unlock exclusive episodes, and your support helps keep these conversations going. The link is in the description.